I'm now going to show you how to take a chain of custody test and send a sample off to the laboratory. So if we look at the components of the kit, this is what you should be sent when you buy one. You should have a chain of custody form. You should have a transit bag, which is in two parts, and I'll explain that as we go through. You should have a first class paid postage bag that goes off to the laboratory. You should have two transport pots, two urine collection vials, and a cup with a thermometer on the front. I'll explain that as we go through. So the first thing we have to do is to fill out the chain of custody form. So if we take that first, I'll just slide this to one side. What we do here is take our initial donor consent form, the same form that we filled out when we done the first line test, and we start to transport some of the information from this form onto this. So on here, if I just run through the form, so we've got customer telephone number, customer postcode, customer name, site and location, so that's your company name and where you're located. A reason for doing the test, so that could be pre-employment, so that can be as part of an induction or interview process, post-accident, incident or near miss, on a random basis, as follow-up testing to a previous drug test, for cause or on suspicion, or as part of scheduled drug testing. We then have the collector's name, and then the donor's name and any ID. We then have the donor's date of birth, whether they're male or female, and the collection time, and then the collection date. And here, if you have it, the donor's national insurance number. Moving to the next section, where it's declared medication. And if you've already filled out an initial donor consent form, you should be able to transfer the information from there directly onto here. So there's a statement here that says that I understand the sample I'm consenting to give will be sent to the laboratory for drug analysis. I also understand that medication could affect the laboratory result and that a positive laboratory result may require medical review. You then list the medication they're on, the dosage, the day they last used, and the time that they took it. Underneath that there are two little boxes with a statement against each. The first one says I am not taking and have not taken medication in the last 14 days, and if that's the case the donor simply ticks the box there. Or I am taking medication but I don't want to declare it. It then further goes on to say I give consent to my employer to pass on my contact details to the medical review officer if requested. I understand that any information I give to the medical review officer is confidential. If this is an oral fluid test, they would then go on, the statement thing goes on to say, I understand that in the last 10 minutes before the test, if I have chewed, swallowed or tasted anything, this could affect the sample I am consenting to give. I also understand that smoking in the last 10 minutes could affect the sample. The donor then signs the medication box, and underneath that we do a urine temperature check. So if you've checked the temperature on here, which we did earlier on, and it was 32, so I put a little tick in the box to say that the temperature was right. And then the test required. So if you have a non-negative result for, say, cocaine and a THC here, that's what you're going to put in the box there. There's then a donor consent section, and the statement says I certify that the sample accompanying this form is my own and has been provided to the collector. The sample was labelled and sealed with tamper-proof evidence seals, which I signed. I consent that the information about me on this form is correct, and this sample is to be sent to the laboratory to be drug tested. I consent to the result being made aware only to the designated members of the organisation who requested the test. The donor then signs in there and dates it in there. And then there's a collecting officer declaration which says I certify that the sample identified in this form is the sample provided to me by the donor who has consented to the test. The sample was collected, labelled, sealed and packaged in the donor's presence as required by the instructions provided. The collecting officer then signs and dates in there. The other important thing we need to do here is at the bottom we have two tamper-proof evidence seals, and we get the donor to sign each of the two seals and put the dates in there. The collecting officer could sign and date the two tamper-proof evidence seals. However, the donor could simply come back into the testing room at a later stage and say that because they hadn't signed it, you could have opened the pots and put new seals on, so it's in your best interest to make sure that the donor signs both of the seals and dates them. And that's how to complete a chain of custody form for drug analysis.